Well, Dan, the jury just came back in this case after deliberating for almost 2 full days. So I'm going to have to refer to my notes as I bring you up to date. Now, the jury did return a unanimous verdict that this death was by homicide and that the primary cause was starvation. This 5-person jury also made 13 recommendations, including better pay for frontline caregivers, unannounced visits to homes where vulnerable clients are being placed, and changes to give support to family members of a vulnerable individual who may want to care for that person in their home. That hasn't been previously available. And so what we heard from some of the testimony is that families are more or less compelled to put their loved one, who maybe like Florence Girard was, someone with Down syndrome, into government care, which was not a great situation in this case. We heard from Florence's sister, Sharon Bursey. She said she would have cared for Florence in her home with her husband and her 2 children, but that would have meant she had to quit her full-time job because there's no way she could afford to do it. But there was no supports coming or flowing down from the government through Community Living BC and through the agency that was responsible for Florence Girard. That's Kinsight Community Living in the Tri-Cities area. And so Florence instead went into care, and we all know what her fate was now.
Now, the sister of Florence Girard, Sharon Bursey, is reacting to the jury recommendations. She says she feels vindicated, but stressed the system has to change.
It's been a long 2 weeks, been a long almost 7 years. You know, I've always considered Florence murdered, and now they say homicide, so CBC needs to make changes, the systemic.
Bursey says she's hoping to hear from the Premier that the government is going to make changes based on the jury's recommendations. Disability advocates say there are 13 recommendations, noting that means there is a lot of work to be done.
It says to me that, we have systemic failures, we have systemic indifference towards people with developmental and intellectual disabilities in this province. Kinsight failed. CLBC has failed, and the ministry has failed.
Astrid Dahl was a subcontractor for Kinsight Community Society, an agency under contract with Community Living BC. That's the Crown Corporation that pays for services for adults with developmental disabilities.